Hi everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing some sewing. Our sewing playlist has been stagnant and it needs a little help. Everything that I do, I tend to grab the camera and videotape it so that it can help you. Today's help is altering denim jeans. Now, most people can do this with any homeowner sewing machine. Brother, Singer, very common, like Walmart, even Target has even had sewing machines over the years. I have a Husqvarna sewing machine that I've had for a long time, and I am a hard fit in jeans because like right here is my hip bone. I have a very high rise, so high fitting jeans tend to help me better. I do a lot of work. We are farmers and have property management, and I am bending over, kneeling down, and crouching a lot. And I don't need that gap that happens in the back of pants. So these are some vintage Lee Ryder jeans, and Lee jeans are the staple mom jean. I'm a mom. I've never had a pair of Lee jeans, and I can tell you the best fitting jeans I've had in my life has been Chic, C-H-I-C, and they haven't made them since probably the early to mid 90s. So if you find a pair of these vintage jeans and they don't quite fit you right, find the best fit you can right through this hip region here, because you can alter it here, you can change it here, you can change your waistband to get rid of the pucker, and right through here if it's baggy in the butt. I've got a decent fit here in the bottom area. I just need to bring it in here. So the best way to do that, so you can see just what happens when I tug. Gather it up and you can mark it. Now a lot of people talk about tailor's chalk. I don't have tailor's chalk, and I do a lot of sewing. So when you do that tug, you want to make sure that the seam is staying straight. Otherwise, there's another alteration that you can do if you're taking jeans that are maybe 2 to 4 sizes too large to alter, where you can open up or take in this seam also. You just have to take more of the waistband off to make that alteration. If it's cocking sideways like that, if it's too noticeable, you may have to change that. The hard part with that alteration, see that little metal stud? You've got to find a way to get that out if you're going to do that. We're not going to do that alteration today, but I want to tell you, if you do get into that kind of alteration, you're going to need something like jewelry making cutting tools, wire cutting tools, to try to get that out. It's a challenge. I actually have a diaper press for doing that kind of, and the two pieces marry together, sometimes into 3 pieces. It can be a lot of work trying to get that out, and the best thing I can tell you is find pants that don't have that, or just start with this back alteration. So the first thing we're going to do, and I have these quilting pins that are extra long, and they have a nice size head. So if you look here, this is a regular sewing needle for pinning and altering. Look at these two side by side. The yellow one is so much easier to grab, and another 1/2 inch longer for grabbing. Now, if you don't have sewing needles, you can do this with safety pins. You're just going to want to gather that up. Caution about always sticking these in your mouth. If you have children, don't let them see you do it. So you can do that, and you can grab it. So you can hear the kids are all crazy in the background. Big binder clips for office use are really great for this kind of repair, because you can gather it up, and that's going to tell you how much you need. And if you have a helper at this point, that's always nice too, because you're trying to get through both layers. me, I'm making a mark on both sides because it is harder to get through those 2 layers. So if you can see what I'm doing, some people will try to do this with their pants inside out. That's fine also. There. So now I've marked this on both sides with a pin, and that's going to tell me how much I have to take in. So just at a visual check, it looks like I need to take in about 1.5 inches on either side. So we're going to go ahead, slip these off, and start doing seam ripping of this waistband here. And you can see I've got a different, very narrow label here. Some people like to make their adjustment under there. On these particular pants, that's not going to make a difference for me because it's not going over the entire waistband. It's more rectangle and narrow instead of the whole patch. So we're going to be doing our hem so that it's going to be hidden by the center belt loop. So you might wonder if it's worth your time or your money to be doing the alterations to your pants, but let me show you. I was at Volunteers America, half off day. These were $3.50, so that works out really good for me. Pants-wise, there's plenty of space here, and some people prefer to take in the seam here. Basically, it would be a dart in the center, but you end up losing that seam in the back, the manufactured seam. The pockets are moving at the same time, and what you can end up getting is a butt that looks like a sports bra. You get a unibutt, you know, like how you do with the uniboob. So it's really recommended to put some darts in here in this area to blend into the pocket, or just to do a small V-shape through here. I don't want to lose any of this center seam here, so I've gone ahead and used my seam ripper. I've taken off the stitching here on this bottom edge to remove the waistband in the area that I'm going to be working in. I'm going to continue on a little bit further to be able to put my darts here. I have got about 1.5 inches on either side of the belt loop. Now I've removed the belt loop, as you can see, and I did it off camera because it is a two-handed, very slow job. You can do it quickly with a straight razor blade. Like I said, and you heard earlier, we have small kids in the house, so using my seam ripper was the best bet for me to not have any tools out for little hands to get. So that's been removed at the top and the bottom. I stuck it and stored it in the front pocket for the time being, and now I can continue on here on the sides once I've got this measurement to know how far I want to take in my darts here on the side. So I recently had to replace my seam ripper, and this is a Singer sewing machine ripper, and it actually came in a 2-pack for just under $7, so very handy to have. I've got 2 different lengths. One is much longer. This one is very small for doing small detailed work or for traveling. You'll need a pair of scissors. This is a sewing awl. It helps to kind of push things through when you get into a bit of a bind. And it's just an extra tool that I have on hand in case I need it. A tape measure. Of course, your pins. You're going to want pins, thread. And in this case, I have got a beige top stitching thread. You can color match it. This is an old vintage fabric, so this was originally probably a little more on the gold end, and it's going to be a hard match. So I'm probably just going to end up going with a blue to be able to show you, or maybe I'll just do a contrasting thread to be able to have that camera pick it up better. Now this is something that came with my sewing machine. Like I said, it's a Husqvarna sewing machine that I've had for years. It's a thickness jumper, so when you get to a heavy seam like this, your sewing machine needle can want to break, and they do make heavier grade needles and denim thread for these situations. You put this behind your needle and it helps get over this area, and then as you sew, you can just keep on moving it. So hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that to you when we get into that situation. And then of course you're going to need a sewing machine or a serger to do this. I tend to use both in most of my sewing, and this is why. A sewing machine can give you a nice folded edge and seam when you're sewing, and then with the serger you can get a better finished edge. This is just a practice piece that I had in my sewing bag from a while back, but it does kind of a chain and overlap stitch at the same time, so that you're not going to be having any fraying and unraveling later on, which is very important with doing some of these alterations, because if you have extra material that you're going to be cutting off, you're going to want a professional edge. And if you're doing this as a tailoring service for anybody that you're charging a fee, they're going to be expecting that finished edge. So now we've got our pants turned inside out. I've opened up this waistband a bit more, and I measured from the center of where that belt loop had been, because as you can see, that is about 1/4 of an inch or more, and we're going to want to have that centered. Like I said before, if you have one of the big patches, you could move this seam to there instead so that it's hidden. I have just gone with my ruler and measured over. I was roughly 1/8 of an inch and 1 1/4 inch on the other side. So I just rounded it up to 1 1/2 because I want to snug these up a bit, because this waistband actually has some stretch in it. If you are doing like jeggings or anything with a stretch, you can have a little bit of allowance to take in a little bit more than you need. Or if your weight is going up and down, maybe you want to take in a little bit less, just so that it sits correctly on your waist without that pucker. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and fold that together. And if you want to, you can cut this open. It's entirely up to you. If you run this through a serger, it's going to cut it while you sew. So I want to just go ahead and if you want to, you can take tailor's chalk or a quilting pen and mark this so that you can take your pins out and just sew them together, right sides together here, so that it's going towards the inside of the pants. And then that seam is going to be invisible when you're doing your other sewing. So this is a quilting pen that I have, and you could even use one of your, kids' washable markers just to make an indicator where those pins are, so that I can remove those now and have them out of the way, because I've stuck my hands enough with them. And if you want to place darts to continue down or to ease into the seat, you can do that. I'm going to have trouble, as you can see, these pockets are very close to that center seam. So I am probably going to move my darts slightly off to the side here, so they're going to run into the pockets, and then I won't be forcing those pockets closer together. So now I'm just taking my waistband to the sewing machine, and sometimes your sewing machine can go over this folded edge really well. In my case, my waistband is 2 layers that are separate instead of just folded over. So I actually disconnected them and am sewing them separately. I'm just going over it first with a zigzag stitch. Now I'm just trimming along that edge, because I didn't really want to set up the serger, because the serger takes 4 threads and I don't have a 3rd jeans needle, and that's something that I wanted to show you. That this is a denim or jeans needle. It's a bit thicker gauge metal, heavy duty, so it says jeans right on there, where your typicals just have the gauge that they are. So this says like medium weight fabric. And then to make this lay flat, of course I always go back and trim anything. And that's, you know, one thing about working with jeans that are, you know, vintage is you get a lot of the spraying that's on the edge, and that's why I recommend finishing those edges with the serger if you can. This is something that's not going to be shown, and it's going to be encased also. But to get that to lay flat, you may want to take your seam and open that up like that and stitch that flat so that it's not going to want to raise up and push into your back later on. So I'm just going to run that through the machine now to get that flat finished edge. And switch your machine to straight stitch. Tack it on 0. And then with denim, you can do a really wide stitch as it's feeding through at about a 3. Okay, so here you can see I have my waistband sewed together. And I just did a real faint line where it was going to line up to where I want to put in some darts to take in that lower like saddle area before the pockets, just to cinch that up a bit. And you can always, I don't recommend cutting this. That way if you have any weight gain in that area where women get like the muffin top, these are high-waisted jeans, then you can let that out again later on. So I'm going to take in roughly an inch together to both sides to get a more snug fit in that region, to not have the bagginess that was being created in that middle area. Darts are really easy to do. I just recommend doing them on a straight stitch and back stitch at the beginning and end, because that's going to help you a lot. Now I am doing mine on a bit of an angle, and right here is where the jumper is going to help you. So with that needle down, you then it's down into the fabric. You want to lift your presser foot and slip this in there, and that is going to help you jump that little notch. Now put your presser foot down so that you can sew up to it, and just go real slowly. If you are unsure ever of anything like this, go ahead and use your hand wheel rather than your foot pedal. And I'm stopping where that flat stitch is that goes across that back seam. And I'm going to back stitch just a bit, and a couple of stay stitches so that it doesn't come undone. Now you can go over this area a couple of times if you prefer. If you ever have to rip it out, the less sewing layers or thread layers in there, the better. So that allowed me to go right up to that, and see, I've just got that right in there. Real easy, and that is going to give me enough of a difference so that this isn't going to be all puckered up. And then I'll just do the same thing on the other side. I had my blue line or my mark line on the inside, and I'm bringing that in to that layer and sewing on it, because I don't want those pockets moving too much. So now we're just going to do the same thing on this side. And as far as seam allowance, I am just using my presser foot as my seam allowance guide. And then with some luck and precision, that smaller waist will fit up there nicely. probably the longest part about your resizing your pants is going to be taking off the belt loop and second guessing yourself and then watching the videos on how to do it. So I can see I'm getting a good fit here. Now if you want to, you can add extra darts, but together I've gotten a bit taken in there. I'm just going to try these on with them to see how our fit is working out before I sew the waistband back on. So trying these on inside out with the mirror, I can see right where my pleats or darts are going to be and whether I need to make any adjustments there. I think it's going really good, and I see I have a little bit of room in the hip thigh area, so I can actually do a small taper right through here to size this down just a bit. The tag on these was faded enough that you really couldn't tell what size they are. But a thing to know about buying vintage jeans to alter, a lot of times you're going to have to size up quite a bit, because like I have jeans in my own storage that maybe say they're a 10 and I can't get into them at all. I have old Levi's that are women's 32, 34 and I can't get into them, but I have men's 32, 34s that I wear every day. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping. It's just a number and it's your body measurement, not the size of the tag. Another tip or a thing to remember in your pants is the pockets. Like this is a pair of men's pants that was given to me by my daughter. I think they were my son-in-law's, and they're a 32, 34. These pockets go down to here, way below my butt. So it makes it look like you have a low, saggy butt. And for a woman of my age, that's not going to be appealing. The higher waisted jeans can complement a small waist if you have that, or to create the illusion that you have a waist if you don't, because it's pulling everything in.
A real name.
Now for me, I kind of played with my darts a bit to see where I wanted them to end. And at first I thought I wanted them to end right at that little saddle area on that seam. And I was getting an unusual pucker. So I decided to continue. So I'm matching up that seam here as I sew, and I'm ending it into the pocket. It's a bit of a tricky task trying to line up that seam through the layers because you are inside out and it is hard to see what you're doing. Just to show you here, I had first stopped before this seam, then I tried going past the seam and it left it looking a little unusual. So then I ran it right into the inside of the pocket. So this is my pocket corner here, and it should line up and lay flat nicely. And like I said, I want to leave that in case there's ever any weight gain, and I want to open it back up. So now it's just a matter of reattaching the waistband to the top edge of the back. So we're going to line those up. I have pinned down my darts to help sew over because you don't want them going towards the center seam because it will just add too much bulk for your needle to go through. So I've got them folded out so they'll get caught and laid down nicely. So again, this is the thickness jumper, and I'm sewing on the top section of that back seam. I've gotten to that middle section where all those layers are, so I've lifted up my presser foot. And the thing about this is it wants to stop at that seam because it's so tall. But that's just going to help even things out. And then lining up that top seam, we're just going to continue forward very slowly. And as you go, your feed is pushing the jumper backwards, so you may need to lift it, put it back in and readjust it, because it's going to travel right along with your presser foot. And now we're over it. So we're just going to continue to sew to where we started our seam ripping and go a little bit beyond there to make sure that those layers are all anchored. and then either do some reverse stitching or stay stitching or both. And now our top seam on that waistband is closed up. So now we just have to get this lower section put in there and do the same. Again, it's a top stitching, closing it up. So go ahead, take your time to make sure things are lined up on the inside so that you catch everything, and use your pins because it will help you to not have to just finger pin it and gradually move in the area of closing it up. Now for me, I wanted the hip area taken in just a little bit. The legs were a little wide, so I just made a pin mark right above the knee as an indicator of where to start to come in on the sides. And I brought in a quarter to a half an inch depending on the curve of my hip as I pinned up on both sides so that these could have a slendered hip area for my fit. You could change this all the way down to the ankle depending on your needs, but you can see here I just kind of went along and I just kept going right up until where that pocket rivet is up in the front part of the jeans. So as you can see, with a little sewing and a little bit of time, I've got a much better fit. I don't have the baggy butt that I had before. There's no gaping and gathering up here in this section that I had. Taking in that little bit on the sides made a big difference, and they feel so much better. I don't even have to have a belt with these pants now, and for $3.50, just spending the time, you know, researching on tailoring and doing some jean work. Denim is not something that I sew a lot. Generally, it's patch and repair only. So this was a nice trick to be able to go into my closet, downsize some of those jeans that I've been hanging on to from post-pregnancy. My baby is now 6. And it's like, okay, do I chuck it or do I, you know, I'm not going to have any more. So this was a good way to be able to go in, budget friendly, redo my wardrobe, and continue on. I hope this helped you. Ask me questions. I'll answer the best I can. I can show you, you know, other alterations and tips along the way. But my main thing in this house is doing repairs. And this little tailoring job is right up my alley for saving money. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.